Good evening, folks. It is Sunday, the 4th of December. It's almost the end of the year. And this is your Factivist report. And we're going to turn this over to Dave and get this show on the road.
Okay. The reason why we do these is to try to inform you and also try to spur you to action. If anyone on social media wants to hurl insults at me, wants to call me a scab because I'm defending Joe Biden and what he did, go ahead, but I'm not going to bother anymore. I'm going to block you. What I will say is that we all have a role to play in trying to affect change, and we're going to talk about one specific thing, and that is the rail strike, what's going on, their conditions, and what we can do not only to fix the conditions for the rail workers, but also for the public in general, and specifically in terms of sick leave. Okay. I don't know if people are, let me turn my phone off. Twitter is annoying me. Again, guys, you will be blocked. I'm just telling you. So we had the threat of a rail strike. The rail workers are under an agreement, and it's a national thing that Congress can intervene, the president can intervene because of how important the rail workers are to the infrastructure. They are under different rules than other unions, and we'll get into it. Also, this whole thing, if the rail workers were allowed to strike, not only would they have not been getting paid, it would have created $2 billion worth of damage to the economy. I know people hate to hear that, like, oh, you guys worry about the economy more than the plight of the American worker. You know what? How much have we heard day in and day out about the Republicans bitching about gas prices, bitching about food prices, and everything else? We're talking about the quality of water quality would have gone down. We would have had cattle and farm animals dying from starvation because they wouldn't have grain. We would have food shortage. We would have gas prices going through the roof. We would have toilet paper, that kind of stuff again. So I understand. I get it. I really do get the problems of these particular people. And I'm going to get into it right now. So here is the New York Times did a fantastic job just kind of encapsulating everything. This is just talking about what Congress did, what the rail strike entailed, and all of that. So this is where we're at in terms of the rail workers. Congress has the power under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution to regulate interstate commerce. The Supreme Court has ruled that includes the authority to intervene in railway labor disputes that threaten trade over state lines. The Railway Labor Act was enacted in 1926, allows the president to intervene in disputes that threaten substantially to interrupt interstate commerce to a degree as to deprive any section of the country of essential transportation service. Okay. So Joe Biden tried to get involved in in contract negotiations. Congress has stepped in 18 times to avoid work stoppages. Okay. The main issue here was sick time. And we'll get into it in depth, actually. Freight rail carriers, second largest mode of freight transport in the United States. More than a quarter of U.S. freight before the pandemic was transported by railway, according to federal data. This includes important commodities like coal, lumber, oil, and chemicals. And by the way, some of those chemicals are used to purify water, that kind of thing. Had no agreement been reached, a strike could have brought domestic transportation of these commodities to a grinding halt during one of the busiest times of the years for carriers, making it nearly impossible to transport products like oil and grain. And this is an economic thing. Also, it would have affected 750,000 workers who would not be able to do their job one way or another, not just rail workers, because they would not be able to have the products in order to do their job. Okay. Why would Democrats who are generally pro-labor force an agreement on workers? Okay. It is economic. Okay. Pure and simple, it's economic. There were 4 out of the 12, I believe there were 12 unions. 4 of them balked at the agreement because of the sick time. And it was sick time. We'll get into it a little more. There's some stories in here that I just, a lot of these workers, they are on a very short notice. They have to continually look to see when they're working. They could be working it for long stretches. They can go to a location and have to wait in a hotel for 18 to 36 hours, unpaid, by the way, for the next trip to come, and then go to the next location, and then you continue the work. So it's a little crazy. So why has sick leave emerged as a sticking point? Workers say they were pushed to the limit of their mental and physical health because of grueling and unpredictable schedules. And they have demanded more flexible leave policies. They were looking for 4 days. Okay. They got 1.
And by the way, we should mention that the House progressives forced the 7-day bill, which passed the House.
Yep. It passed the House. It did not pass the Senate because it did not pass the filibuster. Right. And I'm going to keep saying it over and over again. You're going to hear this as a theme. Didn't pass the House, and there was 1 Democrat that voted against it, Joe Manchin.
In the Senate.
Joe Manchin. And I will say this over and over again, and I have the sources. Joe Manchin has direct ties to coal. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows he owns coal interests, and coal, 90% of coal is transported by rail. So he has a conflict of interest. He does. That's so.
And you're going to hear something else that's a theme over and over again. We've been telling you for a long time, we need a bigger plurality in the Senate to overcome the filibuster. Had we gotten that in the midterms, that bill may have passed. It's going to be, we're going to keep saying it. 52% of the registered Democrats voting is unacceptable.
So here is part of the problem. The railroad companies, the rail companies.
Oh, agreed.
Here are the largest U.S. railroads. BNSF, which is one of the bigger bullies in this whole thing, $23.3 billion. Union Pacific, $21.8 billion. CSX, $12.5 billion. Canadian Railway, $11.5 billion. Norfolk Southern Railroad Way, $11.14 billion. And some things that I've heard, in some of these articles that, well, the workers aren't that important. They don't drive the revenue. Well, then if the workers aren't that important, why are you so concerned about a strike, number one? And number two, why can't you give them a few more paid days leave then? Okay. They're full of crap. I'm going to read this. This is Joe Biden's statement. I know people are upset about this. They have a right to be upset. Okay, they do. But this is what it is. And for anybody, and by the way, question my union loyalty all you want, but there are realities here. And we also have a responsibility ourselves to push positive outcomes. Remarks by President Biden at the signing of HJ Res 100, providing a resolution to avert a nationwide rail shutdown. So this is the president. Let me begin by thanking my team here. They did one heck of a job in averting what could have been a real disaster and ended up with a good product. I disagree with that. I do. But I understand where he's coming from. We still have more work to do, in my view, in terms of ultimately getting paid sick leave, not just for rail workers, but for every worker in America. There is legislation out there that is fighting for that, and only that, by the way. I'll introduce it at the end. It's sponsored by Patty Murray. I'm sure they're going to have to redo the whole thing, go through the House and the Senate all over again. That's a goal I had.
That with the statement that you're going to be hard pressed to get it passed through the fucking GOP House. I'll just say it right now.
And every single person that has a GOP House rep, you pressure them as hard as you possibly can. Okay. It's a goal I had in the beginning. I'm coming back at it. So, but good morning. The bill I'm about to sign ends a difficult rail dispute and helps our nation avoid what, without a doubt, would have been an economic catastrophe at a very bad time in the calendar. And by the way, this rail strike would have been considered illegal. And they actually on Twitter compared Biden to Reagan. Reagan wouldn't have done any of this, and he just would have fired the rail workers. Just so you know, just like he did with the air traffic controllers. Our nation's rail system is literally the backbone of our supply chain, as you all well know. There is a 1926 bill out there that protects or that keeps rail workers from striking because of this very thing. So much of what we rely on is delivered from our rail, from clean water to food and gas and every other good. The clean water is a big, huge thing. A rail shutdown would have devastated our economy, estimated $2 billion a day. Without freight rail, many of the U.S. industries would literally shut down. And in the event of a shutdown, my economic advisors report that as many as 765,000 Americans, many of them union members themselves, would have been put out of work for the first time, and within the first 2 weeks of the strike alone. Communities could have lost access to chemicals necessary to ensure clean drinking water. Farms and ranches across the country would have been unable to feed their livestock. Thanks to the bill Congress passed and what I'm about to sign, we've spared the country that catastrophe. At that time, we've ensured workers are going to get a historic 24% wage increase over the next 5 years, improved working conditions, and peace of mind around their health care. Okay. So he's working on these things, and none of these things are going to happen if the American people don't push for it, because you do have Republican pushback. And look, I know this bill doesn't have paid sick leave that all these rail work that these rail workers and frankly every worker in America deserves, but that fight isn't over. And I understand that. I didn't commit we were going to stop just because of we couldn't get it in this bill, that we were going to stop fighting for it. I've supported paid sick leave for a long time. I can attest to that. I have a bunch of the bills that he has pushed, that have it in there. And I'm going to continue that fight until we succeed. I want to thank Congress, Democrats, and Republicans for acting so quickly. I know this was a tough vote for members of both parties. It was tough for me, but it was the right thing to do at the moment to save jobs, to protect millions of working families from harm and disruption, and to keep supply chains stable around the holidays and to continue the progress we've made and we're continue to see on the economy. For months, and he's right about this, for months you couldn't look anywhere without seeing headlines screaming gas prices at the pump are up. But look, folks, gas prices are down and you can barely hear anything about it right now. And they're continuing to go down. They've been going up and down. However, if this rail strike happened, they would have skyrocketed. And there's more. There's a lot more that's going to happen. They're down more than $1.50 a gallon since last summer, and they continue to fall. Our economy continues to grow. The economic report, the GDP up is up even more than we previously thought. We continue to create jobs, lots of jobs. That is true with the infrastructure bill. And today, we've learned the economy added 263,000 jobs in November. Not sure about that number, but we've added more than $10.5 million jobs since I took office, more than any administration in history at this point in the presidency. I'd have to fact check that. And 750,000 of them are domestic manufacturing jobs, quote unquote, made in America.
Those articles are out there, by the way.
They are? Okay.
He's not pulling those numbers out of his ass. I have the articles.
Okay. The unemployment rate remains near an all-time 50-year low, 3.7%. Wages for working families, I want to say this again, wages for working families, in fact, over the last couple of months have gone up. The wage increases are larger than the increase in inflation during that same period of time. So now we're in a position where things are moving and in the right direction. As we go into the holiday season, here's what this all means. Americans are working, the economy is growing, wages are rising faster than inflation, and we've avoided a catastrophic rail strike. By the way, we're still in somewhat of a recession because of everything that's been going on. This would have crushed us for, so I know people are pissed about it, but this is a reality. It means our plan to build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out. You're tired of hearing me say that, but it's working. The wealthy are still doing very well, while the middle class and poor are having a shot. I want to thank Congress once again for being partners again, for reverting this disaster and keeping our economy on a stable footing during the holiday season. He could have mentioned, trying to get paid leave again, pressuring Congress, but he didn't. But I understand. I want to thank you all. I'm going to reach over here and sign this bill and make it official. He signs it. By the way, I can't emphasize enough how much I appreciate the team behind me working with business and labor to get this done to avoid this, but otherwise it's a really good bill lacking only one thing. We're going to get that one thing done before it's all over. Anyway, thank you. And couple of questions. Mr. President, why aren't you going to Georgia to help Senator Warnock? I'm going to Georgia today to help Senator Warnock, not to Georgia. We're going to help Senator Warnock because I'm doing a major fundraiser in Boston today for our next and continued Senate candidate and senator. Thank you. Mr. President, how soon should rail workers expect sick days? The answer, as soon as I can convince our Republicans to see the light. That's not the whole story. We have to get on board too. The public has to push for this one issue. Okay. This is the sticking point.
Just on social media, why don't you just turn that around and send that information to your legislators? You're spending all your time posting. Why not pick up a telephone? Send a
To the
letter.
guys, to the guys on Facebook, to the guys on Twitter, calling me a scab, saying that I would cross picket line. First off, I can't strike because I'm in United States Postal Service. We're not going to strike. We struck in 1970. I was 2, so I wasn't part of it. So, but stop deflecting, stop insulting one another, and do your part. Stop worrying about, what Biden did. I'm not happy with this. I'm not. I'm not puffing it up as much as he is, but the rail workers did get increased wages and all of that. But their main issue is the fact that their job is taking over their lives. They can't, from time to time, take one day. They have to schedule a day months in advance. You know what? People die. People get into accidents. People get sick. There are stories in these articles about people getting sick and being fired because they did not come to work because they're sick. Or they have an FMLA condition, basically. So, just saying. This, I hope not to make this a 2-hour thing, but I could. I put this in here, because the Democrats are getting blamed. You want to blame a Democrat? Blame Joe Manchin. Blame Joe Manchin. Blame him putting his interest above the worker. Go ahead. They interviewed Sherrod Brown, who basically said that you couldn't get 60 votes. Okay. 6 Republicans voted for it, including the newly ordained socialist Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio voted for this, and Joe Manchin couldn't because he has interest in coal. Bottom line. And Joe Manchin said that he wasn't going to vote for it because they already had a collectively bargained agreement. It's very difficult for these guys to collectively bargain anything. They're not even in the National Labor Relations Board, or they don't have their protection. It's a little different. It's very frustrating. It has to be very frustrating. And it's frustrating to us, by the way, when we're considered essential workers and we're told that even though we don't feel well, we really should come to work because we're essential workers. Stop the double talk. Okay. This is what we're talking about in terms of the leave. Okay. I'm going to, so let me see. Why is it doing that? This is Vice. The worst and most egregious, attendance policy. So remember BNSF, the company that was making billions upon billions of dollars? The company's new attendance policy requires them to be on call 90% of the time. It's called the high risk policy. So this is the husband of someone called Allison. She doesn't want to use her last name because she's afraid her husband's going to get fired because she went to the press. This guy has 10 years on the job. Everything is based on seniority. I understand that part of it because of where I'm at. Worked out, roughly speaking, to 5 weekdays and 2 weekend days off a month. So we're talking 1 weekday and basically rotating, I guess, and you get 2 weekend days off. but that was before. Now, January 10th of 2022, BNSF, that is the largest rail company, announced a new attendance policy called the High Vis program, supposed to improve on the old system. It's basically creating a situation where you have to constantly look at your computer screen to see if you're going to be called in for work, provides little to no leeway for emergencies, and assures workers they're only going to see their families for a few hours a week. Okay, there's a reason why people work, and it's to be with their families. It's to be able to support their families and to be able to spend time. So this is another article from Slate. This is in September when they were actually in the middle of the first negotiation. The actual reason for the conflict between railroad workers and their employees. It wasn't about pay. It's not always about pay. This is about being on call 90% of the time. So they can be summoned to work on 2 hours notice or less. They can be away from home for days at a time. They have no sick days, paid or unpaid. If they have to take time off unexpectedly, even because of illness, they lose points in a convoluted based attendance system called that high ris system. You start with 30 points. I don't know how much how many points you get off for one day. So that means workers are at risk for being disciplined or getting fired for getting sick, going to a doctor's appointment or a family funeral, or for any absence that can't be planned for in advance. They have to plan doctor's visits. They have 3 days now that you can plan, but you have to do it a month in advance. Okay. Railroad worker told an interviewer, told American Prospect, on his 65th birthday, he got home at 7:30 in the morning after working 12 hours the day before, slept for 5 hours, and spent the day refreshing his computer to see if he was being called back to work. So another worker describing the onerous requirements of scheduling off time in advance wrote on Facebook, how do you schedule a funeral in October if it's only February? And there are times in which they would be in a location and waiting for the next job off the clock. So this is, I'm going to skip over a little bit of this. They did go to court over the attendance policy. The judge ruled the policy as a minor dispute.
Was he Republican?
He's the guy that I was telling you about. He blocked the strike over the BNSF attendance policy. He's a federal judge from Fort Worth, Texas. And if you guys might remember this guy, his name is Mark T. Pittman. He's also the Texas court judge, U.S. judge, that blocked Biden's student loan forgiveness policy. And he also struck down a Texas law barring gun carry for young adults under, I guess it was under 18. So just understand, there are a lot of moving parts to all of this. The rail workers are continuing to push this through the court. We'll see what happens. It might get complicated because of the existing law simply for the rail workers. I don't know if they're going to win this. So I wanted to put this in as kind of a as kind of a wake-up call for people. A lot of people were telling me that Biden shouldn't have signed a bill, even if he just shouldn't have signed it and just let whatever happened was going to happen, or even support the union. The union. There are tons of unions in the United States, and in October there were a lot of walkouts, a lot of strikes going on. So if you support the rail strike like that, when in the past you've done everything in your power to keep them working, which union do you not support? If you support one, you're going to have to support all of them when they shut things down. Now it's a little different.
When Starbucks strikes, you can't get your coffee. That's really the difference, honestly.
When the rail strikes, everything shuts down.
Right.
It's more important. It's obviously it's more important. And the postal workers, there's a reason why we have a no strike clause there too, because we're talking about supply chain.
You're also talking about a way a lot of people get their medication these days.
Correct.
Through the post office. Correct.
So this is just more about what it could have happened, if a strike happened. All right. The AFL-CIO urges more sick days for rail workers, but stays mum on imposing contract. They stayed out of it, other than to push for more sick days, which was the smart thing to do. So all of this basically, they talks about all of the things that could have happened. All right. So this is basically just the Reuters story when it happened on December 2nd, that he signed the legislation. I read the entire statement of what he said. And, the Senate voted to impose a tentative contract. They hadn't had a contract since 2020. They're going to have a contract for 2 years because of this. This is representing 115,000 workers. 115,000 workers. By the way, the air traffic controller strike, which was historic, that was 13,000 workers. We're talking over 100,000 workers here. Okay. 8 of the 12 unions ratified the deal. Four unions didn't. Labor leaders have criticized Biden, a self-described friend of labor, for asking Congress to impose a contract that workers in 4 unions have rejected over its lack of paid sick leave. So I understand the issue. Let's attack, if you want to create enemies here, let's attack the real problem. Let's attack the bloated and freaking, just the guys who are not doing the right thing. And that is management in this case. Okay. And let's attack the politicians who have corporate interest in this thing. And you can say, hey, Biden has corporate interests too. AOC, she was screaming about labor, and she voted for, she voted for. I understand that. I do. and people have criticized, Bernie Sanders for attacking the rail companies, but also voting for the contract. There's a reality here. Things have to keep moving. We have to keep working. We have to keep drinking water. We have to keep eating. But for the rail companies to say that the workers aren't important, they're being disingenuous and full of shit. Because they're fighting so hard to keep them working, but they're not willing to pay them what they're worth. They're human. They're human beings. They have to go to the bathroom. They have to eat. They have to go to the doctor. They have to go to the dentist. They have to take care of the kids. They have to take care of their families. They have to live beyond doing the job. Now, some of these jobs do entail travel, all of that. And by the way, as more and more people get frustrated and rage quit, and I've seen a lot of people, or a lot of stories about people just getting upset, fed up, and just quit. That creates more pressure on the people who stay. Again, stop attacking the people who are continually trying to fix the problem. If I didn't see that Biden had tried to put sick leave, and almost got it, by the way, in Build Back Better, if I didn't see that he was trying, I would be right with you. I would be yelling and screaming and calling for it, and trying to find out who we could do to pressure him and all of that stuff. But he is trying. This is the issue, and it's not just rail workers.
And it isn't just Joe Biden. The fact of the matter is that the bill that went to the Senate had 7 sick days in it. Okay? They couldn't get enough people to vote for that.
Right.
And you know what? I'm going to say it. Joe Manchin notwithstanding, even if Joe Manchin had voted for it, the Republicans would not have. I'm sorry. Let's call this for what it is here. All right.
By the way, before everybody goes jumping on Nancy Pelosi, guess who added the amendment to the bill? Nancy Pelosi added the amendment to the bill to add those 7 days. They tried, they couldn't get it in.
And it passed the House.
Passed the House.
It died where it has been dying, where all of these bills have been dying all along since Joe Biden took the presidency. They died in the fucking Senate. Okay? They died in the Senate because they don't have enough votes to get beyond the GOP's use of the filibuster. It's as simple as that. And you know what? Guess what? Before the midterms, how many times did Joe Biden tell you what he needed to be able to do this?
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? Again, I don't want to hear it. You know what? I don't want to hear, we took the midterms off. Well, we're taking the midterms off. They're not important. The fuck? Really?
So, again, what we just went through, Congress moved to avert the rail strike, added, how the House, Nancy Pelosi added that amendment. I don't know why this is here. Oh, there it is. Senate clears rail labor agreement, rejects the sick leave. They didn't have the 60 votes. Now, we have all Democrats vote for it again, except for Joe Manchin.
Right.
We know that Joe Manchin has ties to business. I'm not going to bother with that. All right. But I want you to I want you to I want you to wrap your head around this. How Joe Manchin aided coal and earned millions of dollars. There's something called GOB. It's like kind of a waste. So let me see if I can find this. So he went into business with the Grant Town Power Plant. Mr. Manchin supplied a type of low-grade coal mixed with rocks and clay known as gob that is typically cast aside as junk by mining companies that can be burned to produce electricity. In addition, he arranged to receive a slice of the revenue from electricity generated by the plant, electric bills paid by his constituents. The deal inked decades ago has made Manchin, now 74, a rich man. While the fact that Mr. Manchin owns a coal business is well known, an examination by the New York Times offers a more detailed portrait of the degree to which Mr. Manchin's business has been interwoven with his official actions. Okay. So he created his business while a state lawmaker in anticipation of Grant Tower Plant, which has been the sole customer for his GOP for the past 20 years, according to federal data. At key moments over the years, Mr. Manchin used his political influence to benefit the plant. That's all I'm going to read. Okay. Understand this. This is just a simple coal fact sheet. All right. Well over 90% of U.S. coal's consumption is for electricity, blah, blah, blah. So, although rail coal shipments have declined in recent years, it's still an essential part of the nation's economy and a key rail market. So, we're talking about, electronic. So, I thought that was actually, let's see. There we go. U.S. railroads moved 3.3 million carloads of coal, with each rail car carrying enough coal to power 20 average homes for a year. So 3.3 million carloads of coal. How do you think that gets transported? Through the rail industry. Okay. I understand people want to bash Joe Biden. I do. Here are 30 things that Biden has done to help workers. A lot of these are simple things through hirings, okay? Changing the staff. Peter Robb was an anti-union general counsel that Trump appointed to lead the National Labor Relations Board. That is the board that helps union members and it's kind of a self-policing thing, make sure that the unions are doing the right thing too. Traditionally, the general counsel is tasked with prosecuting cases against bad employers, but Robb used his position to go after unions and union-friendly rules. Robb was fired within hours of Biden taking office. Okay, then he appointed a new NLRB general counsel. Just, different firings, hiring labor people for labor jobs. Actually hired a teacher to run the education department instead of Betsy DeVos. Took back control of the NLRB. Did executive orders, $15 minimum wage for federal contractors. Organizing task force. Allowed unions at the Department of Defense. Ordered OSHA to create a COVID safety standard. Those the pro-Buy American stuff. Ordered federal government to buy more American products. Allowed federal unions to bargain again. Biden ordered agencies to begin bargaining over permissible, non-mandatory subjects of bargaining and ordered agencies to remove immediately anti-union provisions that Trump forced them to put into contracts, including one that kicked unions out of offices that were on federal property. Okay. Here are some, this is the thing that I like about this particular piece, because it shows at the time the piece was done where it was. The American Rescue Plan. This is the stimulus bill. $1.9 trillion protecting public health, contact tracing, protective equipment, increasing domestic production of protective equipment. Gave $200 million to the Labor Department to allow OSHA to enforce safety rules in high-risk jobs like meatpacking plants. Extended unemployment. Gave Americans $1,400 checks, increased the tax credits for parents with children under the age of 18, which, by the way, was a huge sticking point for, guess who? Deb, can you guess?
Joe Manchin.
Yes.
Yeah, because
then,
parents were going to go out and, spend that on drugs. Remember that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Perhaps the most important thing the bill did was for workers was shoring up multi-employer pensions. By the way, is an issue for our good friend Ronald Reagan, something that many unions have been fighting to get done for years. The money will ensure retirees continue to get their full benefits from their pensions. If you work a job to a point where you can get a pension, even if it's a small amount of money, and then you work a second job, you should be able to get your money from both of those pensions. It's your money. So the American Infrastructure and Jobs Plan, that was the infrastructure bill. It did invest a ton of money, of $1 trillion, and it did create jobs. The Build Back Better bill. This would have given people sick leave, and it didn't pass the Senate.
It also would penalize employers financially for union busting.
Yep. The PRO Act didn't pass the Senate. So would even the playing field between what an employer can do during a union election and what a union can do. Bill would protect workers' rights to organize and overturn right to work laws. So, and there's a
chance in 2024 to deliver a Senate. Do it. Okay.
I think we've covered this, but one of the things that Biden realized, and other people have to realize too, is that we don't want to have to go over this fight over and over and over and over again. Railroad workers are not the only Americans without paid sick days. I know it full well from Deb's experiences and from what she's told me about where she worked and when she got sick.
I don't get sick days. If I'm out sick, I'm out sick without pay. When I had COVID the first time, and it was before any vaccines were available, I was out of work for almost 10 weeks. I did get pay at the beginning, but right. I basically spent 8.5 weeks without pay. People need to understand this. It's the reality of the hourly wage worker.
Right. And not that anybody's going to watch this from my job. Any of you who actually do eventually watch this, you have more than you think you have. We get 12 days of sick time. We get an inordinate amount of annual leave compared to what other people get. These guys are getting like one day. I don't know if you can bank it. I doubt it very seriously. So let's put it this way. We can bank up to about 500 hours of annual leave, and store it. So, guys, realize what you have and don't be stupid and don't throw your job away. Don't steal. Don't, threaten the boss. Don't get in fights. Come on. I had to get that in there. So this is an article about Build Back Better. The U.S. was close to universal paid leave. With the collapse of Build Back Better, it fell apart. And look at who is at the top of the article.
Joe Manchin, who, by the way, has partnered up with the Republicans many times to kill a lot of shit that would have benefited the American people.
Right.
Including, by the way, his own constituents who were unhappy that he did not sign on to Build Back Better. You know what? Your chance to get rid of him is coming up in 2024, folks. You know what? You are in West Virginia. Why didn't you demand the West Virginia Democrats find themselves a fucking primary candidate to try to eliminate him? We must be able to find one person that's reasonable to vote for other than Joe fucking Manchin.
Right. Here's another thing that that President Biden tried. Now, he knew that there was no way in hell that this was going to go over, but he gave it a shot. What the hell? So this is a little article by Stephen Mills. How President Biden's paid FMLA proposal would work. By the way, family medical leave only protects you from discipline, and there have been instances of businesses who have gotten around it and kind of, if you use FMLA, it's kind of it's kind of known that you might get in trouble. That's what I've heard. Exactly. It's good for federal workers, but like in the private sector, I've heard, and especially in those states with the anti-union laws, I just blanked out what it's called. The
right to work.
Right to work. Thank you. The right to work laws. Right to work basically means
union busting.
Union busting. That they're gonna make it so that you have to protect people even if they don't pay union dues. So Biden proposed a national comprehensive paid family and medical leave program funded through tax increases, paying workers up to $4,000 a month. Under that cap, it would replace a minimum of 2/3 of average weekly wages, rising to 80% for the lowest wage workers. So, guess what? Didn't pass. But it's there. I wanted to mention this too. One of the things that we can do is work through organizations to try to get sick leave passed, and also try to work through your state legislators. The 13 states and Washington, D.C. have enacted laws in the state to require paid sick leave. And there is a list here. If it allows me, there we go. So let me see. Read at your leisure. It should. the types of employers that are that cover the sick leave accrual. So let's just say Arizona, private sector employers, local governments. 1 hour of sick leave for every 30 hours worked, maximum of 40 hours a year. So that's 1 week of the sick leave. Okay. California has a cap of six days. A lot of these, 6 days, 7 days, 40 hours, that's 5 days. So it looks like about between 5 and 7 days. Okay. So if you can't get it federally, maybe you can get it through your state.
Can you show me Massachusetts real quick?
Yeah.
Just curious.
I was wondering about your employer, Ashley.
My employer?
Yeah.
Yeah. We have 7. We have 7 people on the schedule, not 11.
Right. So there you go. And so that's another thing. If you're a small business, you probably pay attention to that and go, hey, I can't hire more people because then I have to pay this.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
There's always the torture people and make them quit, as opposed to firing them routine too, because that way you don't have to pay for their whatever unemployment. Right. Put it that way.
So here's a little bit more about Build Back Better. The House spending bill. Here's the thing. You can always propose it again.
That's right. And you know what? They just have to keep at it. They really do. And
right.
I'm just going to say this. The more you get rid of the MAGA Republicans in the government, in the legislature, the better shot you have of getting this stuff. Right now, the Republican Party is so off the fucking chain that none of this is going to happen. And everybody needs to understand that.
I want to say one more thing, and I did this one in one of our short shows. I did 2 short shows because people were pissing me off. This is a bill. People are like, well, why don't they just introduce a bill that just deals with sick leave? What? You mean like the Healthy Families Act? Introduced by Patty Murray? Yeah. Here it is, okay? Didn't go anywhere. We have to continue to hammer this, okay? Instead of yelling at each other, calling me a scab, calling, Biden irresponsible, saying that I have to be, that people have to be held accountable for not, allowing the rail workers to cripple the economy. And by the way, hurt themselves by not working. Okay. Pay attention to what's going on. Pay attention to the legislation that's out there. In all honesty, this one passed me by. I didn't know about this. Okay. This was introduced in 2021. All right. So get this back out there. Okay.
And by the way, the people bitching about the railway strike not happening, can you imagine them had it happened?
Oh, the gas prices are insane. We can't get food, toilet paper, blah, blah, blah.
I can't get this. I can't get that. Look it. I'm going to say it. That's a no-win situation for whoever is president under these circumstances. Okay. It doesn't matter that it's Joe Biden. It wouldn't have mattered who it was. He has to think of the entire nation, not just one group of people. And it's time for people to understand that there are more people who have to take responsibility than just the politicians. And it's called the people. At one point in 2016, when we were busy streaming and talking, we had people who said that the people are never at fault. It's always the government, period. Well, that's not true.
Right.
That is absolutely not fucking true under any circumstance, okay? Something, if you truly believe we're all in this together, then we're all in this together, and we all have responsibilities. And, engaging your legislature is part of, the civic responsibility that we have. And, maybe if they still taught that shit in school, people would understand that. But of course, they didn't want that to happen because they don't want the people engaged. So, you know what? You need to be engaged if you want to get what you want.
And tweeting is fine, but it's not going to get you what you want.
Yeah,
you can insult me all you want, but
tweeting is fine. But if you think that your legislators are following their constituents on social media, you're wrong. They're not. Okay. By the way, I just have to say this: the only thing that the GOP does with any amount of I'm not even going to say accuracy, with any amount of serious effort is tweet. They tweet all fucking day long. They tweet while they're in goddamn congressional meetings. The GOP does nothing but spend their time finger pointing on social media. They are useless. So I just, that's where we are, folks. Are you done? You want to wrap it up? What do you want?
That legislation just failed. Pretending this administration and Congress didn't just blank over the work has set us up to fail again. Politicians have to be held accountable and pay a political price. Otherwise, they will just keep doing the same thing again. Stop bashing the people that are actually putting legislation out there. Okay? Biden has been promoting pro-sick time legislation over and over and over again. Cut it out. What, you want to hold them accountable? How are you going to hold them accountable? By the way, you just had an election. Instead of freaking tweeting, did you vote? I'm just asking. I made a mistake. I looked at Twitter again.
Stop. Okay.
But guys, we need. You want change? We have to push for sick leave legislation. I have it, but I recognize that's just simply wrong. I have the ability to go back and say, I remember when I didn't have sick leave. I remember when I was threatened. They threatened to fire me because I couldn't go to the bathroom. I had to hold my urine, and I got a urinary tract infection. And they threatened to fire me because I got a urinary tract infection. Okay. I get all this. This is a basic right. Being able to take care of your health is a basic right. You want to vote Biden out? Or you want to primary him? Get another guy? Perfect. Great. Fine. Whatever. But if you get a Republican, you think they're going to be more labor friendly? Look at the history. Ronald Reagan. And by the way, Trump just honored Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, the first guy to dissolve a union, the PATCO union, the Air Traffic Controllers Union. He just basically fired everybody and dissolved the union.
And by the way, let me just say this. No one really even knows if Biden is actually going to run again because he hasn't really determined that.
Right.
All right.
Right.
I'm just going to tell you on the Republican side, if he's not in jail, it's going to be Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and Asa Hutchinson is threatening to run against Trump. If you think you're going to get any increased help for the average American and the average worker out of any of those people, you're smoking crack. You might as well have been on you might as well have been in Hunter Biden's laptop. Because
by the way, yeah, it might. Oh Jesus, you made my side hurt. This may have been a ploy by Marco Rubio and by Ted Cruz to vote for this thing, knowing full well, that they may run, okay, but don't for one instant think that they have your best interest at heart. They've already showed you
Cruz has
themselves.
already announced he's running for the Senate again in Texas. He hasn't said anything about the presidency. Marco Rubio has already run. He already beat Val Demings, so he's back in, and he's nice and safe. So
I know, but it's possible because both of them have run for president for that presidency in the past. It's possible, but why they would do that is beyond me, because it just opens up another seat. You open up that Senate seat again in Florida, and you potentially open the Senate seat up in Texas. That's one thing that we'll talk about in the future is the moving parts again. The guy who's running, what was it, in Indiana? That's possibly open up a Senate seat, or it is.
Running for governor.
He's running for governor. So in Indiana, that opens up a Senate seat in Indiana. Now, Indiana's pretty high hardcore Republican at this point, but you always got to give it a shot.
And by the way, in closing, let me just say this again. During the midterms, the Democratic Party allowed 24 Republicans to run unopposed in the House. Okay, that's unacceptable. We have to do better as a party.
Right.
That party has to do better. I don't care who it is. They have the slimmest of leads in the House now. And you know what? I got to believe out of 24 seats that went unchallenged, there might have been some there that we could have snuck in. It's unacceptable. We need to do better. And the American people need to pressure them to do better. Okay? The Arizona Democrats were unhappy with Kirsten Sinema, and they've insisted that they primary her come 2024, and they're going to. So that's what has to happen. And that's what.
By the way, yeah, I mean, you want to hold people accountable? Figure out which ones you should hold accountable the most. I mean, as I said throughout this entire thing, the villain in this piece is Joe Manchin. Was I happy with what Joe did? No. Did I understand it? Yes. Did I agree with it ultimately? Yeah, I had to, because instead of 115,000 people in jeopardy, now you have 750,000 jobs in jeopardy on top of the American public who won't potentially have clean drinking water, food, and the products. Don't even worry that. Don't even think about, the presents and all that crap. Don't think about that. It's mostly about essentials. The water is a huge part of it, and grain for grain for your livestock, and food for your family, and milk and all of that. Not to mention, I didn't even talk about passengers. Okay. So people who use rail to get to and from work. Just saying. This is all connected. There is a reason why the rail workers have been kept from striking. It is a unique situation. And to think that all unions are the same and all unions should strike whenever they want to, it's dangerous. But anyway.
We're done.
We're done.
Later.